This is the road to Stanley, and Lord Stanley is in sight now with the Florida Panthers squaring off against the Vegas Golden Knights. Game 1 of the Stanley Cup final set to go on Saturday night. But on this edition of the Road to Stanley presented by Bally Sports, he's Pete Blackburn and I'm Frank Seravalli of DailyFaceoff.com. Pete, we're going to focus on the Dallas Stars, whose season was snuffed out by the Golden Knights on Monday night by virtue of a 6-0 throttling in Dallas on Memorial Day. When you look back on this run for the Dallas Stars, what was their demise, Pete?
I would say it was their inconsistency. You know, they were the biggest Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, I think, of the playoffs, especially the deep playoffs, where on any given night, they could be unbelievable. They shut down their opponent, they'd give them nothing, and they'd look amazing, and they'd look like a team that was capable of winning the Stanley Cup. And then on the next night, they'd look awful. And obviously in Game 6, we got the awful Dallas Stars, where they looked completely flat. They didn't have much fight in them. They weren't winning battles. They lost 6-0. Like, just a mess across the board. And that wasn't the first time that we'd seen that. Obviously in Game 3, they kind of laid that egg too and fell apart mentally. But just the inconsistency, even down to a player level with Jake Oettinger, where you had to debate whether you were going to get good Jake Oettinger or bad Jake Oettinger on any given night. You need that consistency when it comes to a deep playoff run, especially in the later rounds against good teams like the Vegas Golden Knights, who do bring a bit of consistency and who will roll 4 lines and never really take their foot off the gas. You can't let up, and the Dallas Stars had too many moments during the course of games and during the course of series where they did let their foot off the gas.
Yeah, wholeheartedly agree with you. I think the reason why they ended up losing in the West Final is because of that inconsistency, but they had to go to the well too many times because of that inconsistency, and that to me is why they fell apart. You see games 4 and 5 staving off elimination. To do that 4 times in a row and complete the reverse sweep, it's so incredibly difficult to do. And when you look at how the opportunity was on a silver platter for them to force Game 7 in Vegas and really have all the pressure on the Vegas Golden Knights, they just weren't able to come to play enough times with that consistent energy, that consistent push to really be able to get there. So Pete, when you look back on the Dallas Stars, let's take a 30,000 foot view of where they're at. Is their window opening or is it closing to win?
It's a really difficult question to answer, just because the Dallas Stars have this weird mix of young talent, which makes the future look bright, but also...
That's why I love the question.
Yeah, right. It's a great question. You've got the older guys who are kind of saddling them right now, and I think that a lot of the questions that's going to be asked with the Dallas Stars heading into this offseason is, what do you do with Jamie Benn? What do you do with Tyler Seguin? Can you move those guys? Do you want to move those guys?
There's no way.
I don't think you can. I don't think there's enough value, and those contracts are quite tough. And we saw what this team was without Jamie Benn for 2 games in this series. They looked pretty good. Maybe this team is better off without a guy like Jamie Benn, even after a season which he kind of reclaimed some of his stardom. Are you going to
Renaissance?
Yeah.
I mean, how long can that continue?
Renaissance. Yeah. Are you going to get that back? And the career arc of power forwards don't typically lend to them being this good late in their career. So I don't know if you're going to get that again from Jamie Benn. So what do they do? For me, I would say the window is closing for now, I guess, because I think you have to wait out some of those contracts and let them free up money. They're going to need to, I think, readjust their roster and retool. Like, I certainly don't think the window is for sure closed, because they do have such young talent with a guy like Rupe Hintz and Jason Robertson and Wyatt Johnston and Jake Oettinger, like Miro Heiskanen. Those guys are there. I just think they kind of have to wait a little bit to free up some of that older money.
Yeah, and look, it's not really going anywhere anytime soon. 2 more seasons of Jamie Benn, 4 more seasons of Tyler Seguin, who didn't score in the conference final. But I'm going to say it's opening for all the guys that you just mentioned. Wyatt Johnston stepping into the league and scoring some clinching goals in series the way that he did as a 19-year-old who turned 20 during these playoffs. Jake Oettinger, Ty Dellandrea had some significant moments for this team. And then you think Jason Robertson, Rupe Hintz, that's the real core of this team. Jamie Benn, Tyler Seguin, that was the most important step that the Stars took this year, was separating themselves from those guys being the driving forces to being the accessories of this team. And so, yeah, are they dead weight in terms of contracts on the salary cap? 100%. There's no way that they're getting anywhere close to the production commensurate to their pay. And you've got Joe Pavelski, who's now turning 39. How much longer can he sort of hold off Father Time? It seems like That's not coming anytime soon. But still, you're looking at 1 year, 2 years, at the most before you can really expect a drop off from Joe Pavelski. So I think it's opening because of the guys that they have that are the core pieces driving this team. If they can find a way to sort of minimize the disruption, so to speak, they're not going anywhere. You're going to probably get a little bit better at some point once those contracts are off the books. And someone like Ryan Suter, you have to rely on less in the playoffs with the mistakes that he made.
Certainly.
These playoffs. So, it's going to be fascinating to see where the Dallas Stars head next. I don't think they're going anywhere as one of the most accomplished regular season teams making the playoffs 4 of the last 5 years, 2 trips to the conference final or later in the last 3. Pete, give me your Stanley standout from the clinching Game 6.
He didn't have to do a ton, but I'm going to say Adin Hill just because of the bigger picture. Like, Adin Hill is now a Stanley Cup final goaltender. Who could have possibly seen that coming? And then, obviously he posts a shutout in Game 6. Again, didn't have to do a lot, but it's crazy that the Golden Knights are going to head to the Stanley Cup final with Adin Hill in net. And he's been a great story, been really good for as long as he's been called on. So, him going up against Sergei Bobrovsky is maybe the most outrageous goaltending matchup that we could have predicted in the Stanley Cup final. But here we are.
Yeah, it's incredible to think that's the case. And we've been saying all season long since September, Pete, that there's no way this Golden Knights team can win with this goaltending. Yet here they are. And Adin Hill putting a ton of money in his pocket with this playoff run as a pending unrestricted free agent. My Stanley standout, Bruce Cassidy, the Vegas Golden Knights coach. He has his team back in the Stanley Cup final, of course, with the Boston Bruins, got there back in 2019. But I love the way that he settled things down for this team. You heard his press conference before Game 6 saying, I think a lot of teams would be envious of the position that we're in. Yeah, we've lost the last 2 games, but all we have to do is win 1, and we're playing for the Stanley Cup. So I thought that was key, but then also the decision to start the 4th line in such a big game on the road. And not only that, but the 4th line came through and scored twice in the first 14 minutes to help the Golden Knights get out to a 3-0 lead. Bruce Cassidy pushing all the right buttons for the Vegas Golden Knights. Their 2nd trip to the Stanley Cup final in just 6 years of existence, and oddly enough, they're in their 3rd head coach in that span. We'll have plenty of the Stanley Cup final preview for you coming this week on Bally Sports.